Welcome to the Mum CEO podcast. I'm your host, Esther Roach. Join me as we explore the dynamic intersection of motherhood and entrepreneurship. From the challenges to the triumphs, we're here to unravel it all. Get ready for insightful conversations, practical wisdom, and a whole lot of inspiration. Let's embark on this empowering journey together.
I'm just going to go back a little bit to talk about, because I've got kids, obviously teenagers. I've got different ages.
Yeah.
My youngest is 8, but then I've certainly got, a teen in the house,
Sure.
and young adults basically. But it's a lot of, as you mentioned, there's a lot of issues, what you were seeing with patients and anxiety and stuff like that. What do you think is the cause of all that?
I don't think there's one cause. I think there's lots. This generation are dealing with a totally different life from what we had growing up. And I think it's unique to any generation that's come before. We had the kind of digital boom, and now they're suddenly growing up with all of that. They're exposed to so much more than they ever were. And they're also being exposed, if that makes sense. Like, you're present on, you can be, a picture of you could be taken and lots of people could see it. That was never the case when we were growing up. Thank goodness. I can't imagine what it's like now. And I think the digital side of things definitely has a lot to answer for. I think people maybe aren't doing as much of the kind of natural things that nourish you and favouring more digital activities. We know that excessive smartphone use in particular changes your brain chemistry. It does cause an increase in anxiety. It does cause an increase in low mood. It does cause problems with attention. And if most of your time is spent on a device and not truly interacting with someone and socializing and developing that kind of resilience, that can change you too. So I don't think there's one answer to this. And I also don't think, what I don't like personally is when people blame, is it Gen Alpha now? Is that generation? It is, isn't it? I've heard people of my generation and older say things like, oh, the youngsters these days, they just can't deal with life, or they're just not as resilient. And I don't like that. I get a bit defensive about that, to be honest, because I don't think that's fair. They are dealing with a completely different life, and yet resilience, like we knew it and what was relevant for our life, might not be as good, but they have to be so resilient in a different way, especially if they've got a smartphone on their phone all the time. They're getting exposed to stuff. And, worst case, if it's cyberbullying, they can't ever get away from that. They're having to figure out how to try and be resilient to some of the stuff that they're getting, either directly or just seeing online. So I think they're resilient in a different way. And I think they're dealing with a whole host of different problems than we were. So I'm not sure that I'm answering this question at all, because I don't know the answer. I think it's big. And I think what I do know and why I've developed this product is that there's a real lack of fundamental health knowledge. And that needs to change, because we know that there's a mental health crisis internationally in that generation. Why is that? Lots of different reasons. There's lots and lots of reactive resources out there. There are apps, there are counselling services, there are all these things, and they are all great and they're fantastic. But what I see the problem with is that this lack of knowledge means that people don't know where to turn when there's a problem. If you know what happens to your brain and your nervous system and your hormones when you do a breathing exercise, you're more likely to do the breathing exercise, rather than just someone saying, oh, do this thing, it really helps. If you understand your body behind it, you're more likely to do that and make better choices for you and for your health. And we know that improved health literacy leads to better health outcomes. It also leads to better educational outcomes, because they're more focused, they're more able to concentrate in school. So all of these things I think are really, really important. And what I've done with the product alongside making it available to schools, because ultimately that's where the idea started, and I really want to see this as an intervention. Something has to change to bring everyone's knowledge up. But I've also made it available for parents and their teens, because as we've been trialing it throughout different schools and we've brought experts on board, a lot of mums and dads have said, this sounds really good, can I get it for my kid? Yeah, of course. So we've launched it on a kind of B2C model as well, to see how that goes. And what that means is the parent gets a login and their child gets a login. So they both have access to the same material, and it means that you can have better conversations about things. There will be things on there that as a parent you don't know. As I've been filming with some of our experts, I've learned some stuff along the way. So there are things that you can learn, and just prepare your teen with real trusted information. Among all this noise that's out there, the point of this is to bring them trusted information straight from the experts. So we've got a team of nearly 30, I think now, experts that all talk on camera. It's all done in a really informal, fun way, because that's what they wanted. Yes. So they can look at whatever they want, they can go into that topic, and they can see someone who's an expert in their field delivering an educational video, essentially. But we use lots of fun, different animation and things to try and make it interesting for them. We've got quizzes in there so they can test their own knowledge. A lot of the young people really love that. And we also feature people with lived experience. So if someone has had something happen in their life and they want to tell their story, we feature that because it's real. My concern is so much of social media is not real and it's not true. And this really is real. I want to bring it back to, let's promote more open and honest and truthful conversations that you can trust. So that's kind of the point in it. And we cover everything for them. You know, we have 3 themes: conversations with yourself, which is a lot to do with mental health and trying to maintain mental wellness. Yeah. Then we have conversations with your body. So we cover skin in there, we cover sexual health, we cover bowels, everything you can imagine, exercise, nutrition. And then conversations with the world is quite fun. So we do relationships, healthy and unhealthy, what a coercive controlling relationship could look like, bullying. We have a huge section on cyber health, which has been developed by an ethical hacker. We have financial literacy section. So there's lots of different things, because your mental health is not just that you're stressed because of your exams, it's everything else. And it's all linked all the time. And that's kind of where it's come from. This definitely wasn't what you asked me.
But you know what? It's
passionate about something. It just goes on and on, doesn't it?
It's so important. The thing is, like, you know, as a mum myself, and you know, I do my best in terms of supporting having that communication with my children, because you know, like I always say to them that you can have best friends and stuff, but I want them to be able to trust me. I want them to be able to come to me when they have a problem. Yeah. But I see there is a lot of problem that there's a lot of people that don't communicate. And this Absolutely. From, you know, their own parents didn't have that relationship with their parents, and it kind of goes down, and that doesn't help, because you can't talk about things. And I think what you're doing will help to open that conversation, hopefully, and give both parents and the teens, you know, that sort of open space, and just to feel a bit more confident in addressing it.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can have it if you don't know enough about all the different types of contraception. Go on and look at that yourself, learn it, and then you can have that conversation with your kids. It's really, it's important that we all know so we can have better conversations, especially if they're going online and an influencer says something really niche. And you as a parent, you don't know what that is, but you could look back at the platform and learn a little bit so you can have the flowing conversation. It's also so normal for teenagers to pull away from their adults a little bit. That's a completely normal psychological development stage for them to distrust the inner circle. And it's probably because at that point in, you know, evolutionary terms, they would have been starting to go out on their own. And you can't just trust what's been told to you by your immediate parents or guardians. So that is normal for them to do. It's normal for them to question authority. And with this, the reason I haven't just had me or Chris just be on the videos, is because there will be people that don't like me and there will be people that don't like him. And what we've tried to do is showcase so many different people and different opinions and different lived experience, because there will be someone on there that might just resonate with someone who's sat and maybe feeling a little bit more vulnerable, and they think, oh, that sounds a little bit like me. And that's really where I think the power in this lies, is that it's a breadth of people, all essentially singing from the same song sheet, all promoting more conversations, all promoting mental and physical well-being. It's really not, it's not like a bank of medical conditions. Absolutely did not want to do that. 98% of this is normal anatomy, normal how your body works, normal how to keep yourself well and maintain mental well-being, with a little bit of, okay, these things maybe are a worry, go and see someone about it.
Yeah.
But it's really getting back to basics to build the resilience and build healthier people. I actually think everyone needs it. I honestly think everyone could do with some of this information, but we have to start somewhere.
No, we do. But the thing is, it's not, you're mentioning and talking about the teens and stuff like that, but equally, there'll be some adults that have missed all that and have never had that kind of guidance.
Absolutely.
That's really important. And I think that's why, like you said, it's difficult to say, okay, they're anxious because of this, because there's so many reasons and you don't actually know what is happening until you sit down with somebody and sort of understand a little bit. It's complex, isn't it? It's like,
they don't always know, and you don't always get to the bottom of it. And at times, there was a time shortly after leaving my job where I felt really quite crippled with a bit of anxiety and low mood and disordered thinking, and I'd never had that before, ever. And I couldn't understand why at the time, because you often don't. You lose the insight into what's causing your feelings and your thoughts. And I just think with me, it was just too much. It was an adjustment reaction. It was a lot. It was a lot of worry about this, and my identity is changing, and your brain spirals. And actually, in the end, I got a little bit of CBT help digitally.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying, you don't need this. You should know all of this. And I said, I know I should know, but I'm here because I've lost the ability to know this and to help myself. And he talked me through really basic principles, which we cover in our program. And I think if you have a structure or someone leading you through that, you're more likely to be able to pick it apart yourself and to be able to do something about it. And in the end, it was all fine. It was all very easily fixed, but I just needed that structure at that time.
So Suzy, you've mentioned quite a lot, and not just, obviously we're looking at adolescents and just the young people, but even as grown-ups, we can get overwhelmed and stuff. Another area I wanted to touch on, which might take time, is the use of mobile phones, because as a parent myself, I'm in different WhatsApp groups and there's a lot of conversations around, I'm not going to let my phone have a smartphone, or they can have this phone and stuff. But we're also living in an age where if a child needs to get public transport, for instance, they end up having a device, which otherwise they probably wouldn't have done. I didn't have a phone until I think I was 21 when I had my first ever phone, the Nokia, which was not a smartphone. It did the job. But from memory, you when, like, nowadays people have the whole appointment system and this and that. But I remember when I was growing up, people would turn up. You still find somebody at the house. There was always somebody. There wasn't this whole appointment system. But what are your thoughts, from your experience and just your expertise within the area of smartphones? Are they good? Are they bad? How can they be incorporated into young adults, like a bit more, I think that's the point, healthily, isn't it?
Yes, because they're here and we can't do anything about that. The world has changed and we have to move with it. And we often say, Chris and I say, the irony of this is, a lot of our program is teaching about listening to yourself, getting back to basics, knowing yourself better, trust your intuition, be in nature more, do the simple things. Yet we've created a digital product, which seems crazy. But the reason is that is the place where young people are. And you can't just go and tell someone who holds a completely different view from you that they are wrong. You have to teach them and go to that space and then bring them on board with some of this information. I struggle with this because personally I hate my phone. I just feel, even though I'm so aware of all of this and a grown adult, I still feel too tied to it at times, and I have to consciously leave it in the kitchen if we're going to watch some TV, or leave it downstairs when I go to bed. Is not easy. And I've seen at times, the scroll, you open your phone to do one thing, and then half an hour has passed and you've looked at nothing of value. You've looked at a few seconds worth of clips of nonsense that you don't need to see. It is highly addictive, even as adults. And there's a couple of things that concern me with young people. First is safety. I mean, you've got a device in your phone that people can access you, and people definitely do. There's so much fraud, there's sextortion, there's all sorts of people out there who could be influencing your child that otherwise wouldn't. And these people are clever. They know what they're doing. They go in slowly and they manipulate slowly. And children and teenagers and young adults, and actually older adults, we're all vulnerable at times to this manipulation. So that's scary as a parent. I'm terrified for when my kids become teens, because it's going to be really hard to police that, for want of a better word, because you don't want to tell them no, because then suddenly you're outdated and a mum, and what do you know about it? And you don't want them to be the one kid in the school who doesn't have something. But equally, your absolute instinct is to protect them always. So really, really difficult. Then, of course, there's the information that they're being exposed to, and the mis and disinformation. So with one of the most interesting studies that's been done recently, last year, was conducted by MyFitnessPal in combination with, I think it was the City of Dublin University. Don't quote me on that, but it was definitely Dublin and one of the universities. And they used an AI algorithm to look at TikTok at that moment in time in 2024, and they looked at all the posts that were on there about nutrition. And they compared those posts with best practice in nutrition and dietitian advice. And they found that only 2% of them were actually accurate. So 98% of that information was false or misleading, which is absolutely terrifying. And the problem is with social media, if you access a bit of information, obviously the algorithm wants to show you what you like. So it shows you more similar content on repeat. So what you might get exposed to is, you've watched one video and about something rubbish, like you should eat 10 spoonfuls of salt a day and that will make your skin glow. And then suddenly you'll get multiple people saying the same or similar things. So you think you're being exposed to lots of different opinions, because there's lots of different people, but they all share the same opinion. And that's where the algorithm can breed. It can even breed radicalization in the worst case scenarios, obviously. But you end up in this thing, they call it a filter bubble. So everyone knows about the concept of an echo chamber, and that's where, when you hold particular views, you tend to surround yourself by people who hold particular views. You join groups or whatever. You're aware of that though, hence it's a solid chamber. With social media, it's a filter bubble. You're not really aware that the information being fed to you is the same on repeat necessarily. And with young people in particular, when they are trying to look out with the family home or out with their trusted adults to what are the what are other people's opinions, if they happen to click on something, they will likely, or they hover over it, not even click, they hover over something for more than a couple of seconds, they're likely to get similar opinions. And that's where they think they're being exposed to so much, but it's not necessarily the true breadth of opinion that's out there, and it's not necessarily true. So that mis and disinformation can be really quite damaging. And then there's the science. So the science behind it, what we know is, when you use phones in particular and social media in particular, it triggers your dopaminergic reward pathway. And what that is dopamine is your feel-good chemical in your brain. So when you do something, it's to do with the reward system. So you get a lot of it if you do something where you've achieved something. You get a lovely big burst of dopamine. Or anything, like from eating a good meal to socializing with friends, you get this rise in dopamine. And the idea is, it's designed to drive us as humans and for us to seek out the things that make us happy. It's the happiness. When you use social media, every time you flick onto the next video or you scroll to the next thing, you get a little dopamine surge. It's dopamine is quite fast, it's rapid, it burns off quicker, and you just keep getting it every single time you're scrolling. And you might think, well, that sounds brilliant, because obviously it's like a shortcut to happiness. The problem with that is your brain changes over time, and it stops being able to release the same amount of dopamine, and it stops how responsive it is to the dopamine. So the receptors become what we call downregulated, desensitized, overstimulated, so they downregulate. So you need a lot more dopamine to get the same feeling. And that's a concern, because then when you go and do something you used to like, maybe you go and play football or you go swimming, you're not going to feel as good doing that as you are with your phone, which gives you that instant hit. So we're kind of not investing in the stuff that makes us truly happy over a long period of time, because there's a quick hit available there. We're training our brain in a different way. And what's fascinating with that is that dopaminergic response is the kind of grounds and the foundation of every addiction. So that is what opiates do. That is what cocaine does. That's what nicotine does. It's what smartphones do. It's what other kind of, people, you hear people that might have had a porn addiction or a shopping addiction or gambling. It's a similar pathway that's happening, but it's on your smartphone, and it's so accessible. It's designed to keep you hooked. That's the point, isn't it? So yeah, that's the kind of science behind a lot of it. And obviously, if we're constantly being bombarded with different sources of information, the longer pathways in our brain are not being formed to deal with concentration and attention spans. So it definitely doesn't help with attention spans and concentration. And I think that's probably the kind of main ways to look at it. Mm-hmm. And with the downregulation in dopamine over time, you will feel more low, and you will feel more anxious when you're not getting that hit quickly from your phone. So that's really the big concern, isn't it? Is how much distraction and how much productivity and everything else has been lost on the scroll now. And yeah, okay, tech is amazing and it has absolutely accelerated our progress as a species, but my concern is how much happiness are we kind of leaking out for that? Does that make sense? Yeah, I wish I'd prepared this chat, because I'm just rambling now.
No, but the thing is, it all makes sense, and it is a lot, but again, it's all referencing to me as a parent, because a lot of the schools have gone online with homework and that sort of stuff. And even if you want to keep a device away, some people can afford to get a computer or a laptop and stuff, because you can control that a little bit more. You don't want to carry a big, massive computer or laptop around all the time. But then other people can only afford a phone. But then if all the homework and stuff is being set on that, it's being set online, they need to have access to the digital world.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's trying to... Yeah. I suppose it's coming down to the whole communication. You've got to educate them and support them and help them and explain all these things then.
Yeah. Oh, we have a whole section on substances and addiction, and it starts off with the basic addiction models and what your brain does, and it got a spotlight on alcohol and opiates and cocaine, blah blah blah. But we have a big section there on digital use and social media, so they can understand. We're not saying don't use it, but just really be mindful. Have a look at your screen time. How did that happen? And did you truly want to spend that amount of time just scrolling? That's just the kind of dopamine addiction side of things. The other thing I definitely want to talk about, because if someone's doing homework on a computer, that might be a more prolonged task. They're not likely to be getting dopamine hits from that. This is more short burst scrolling videos, funny things. That's really where that comes from. But digital screen time, a couple of things. So you get eye strain, obviously. We've known about that for a long time, how you need to look away. The blue light that's coming from screens, and that comes from your computer, your TV, but generally we don't normally sit close enough. Your phone disrupts your normal hormones. So it causes an increase in the hormone cortisol, which is your stress hormone. So the more you're exposed to that, the more stressed you can feel. It also disrupts your nighttime hormones. So when you've got more cortisol in your body, you're not going to be able to sleep as well at nighttime, and it's going to disrupt your day-night cycle. equally, you're not going to be able to switch off as much at night time either. And that's why they always say no screens for, you know, an hour or two before bed. And it seems really patronizing and really basic. And a lot of people are like, oh, what are you talking about? That should make a difference. It absolutely does. And I can say that personally, for me, it's a huge problem. If I have an evening of work and I'm exhausted, I will still lie in my bed unable to sleep for an hour or so. And I can sleep anywhere normally. I'm a fantastic sleeper. So that's a problem too. So you've got the stress response, the hormonal response, the blue light and the dopamine, and then all the other kind of what could they potentially be exposed to. And I don't think there's an answer, and I don't think we can just ban phones for everyone. But the concern with young people is that the front of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is the last part of the brain to develop in humans. That part of the brain takes to do with executive functioning, so cognitive ability, problem solving, your personality, your decision making, your impulse control. That bit doesn't stop developing until you're 25. So that's why young people generally take more risks than adults do, because adults are more likely to overthink it and they're more likely to not be as rash and make sudden decisions. And the concern is excessive smartphone use before the age of 25 is going to be worse because your brain is more vulnerable to these changes as it's developing. We know that adults are affected by all of this as well, but young people under the age of 25 are going to be affected by it more. And it's just about trying to set kind of rigid boundaries with that. You can't get away from it, but what can you do to improve it? And you asked me right back at the beginning of this, you know, is it our smartphones a good thing or a bad thing? And, you know, I think personally there's not a lot of good there and there is a lot of risk. But ultimately, you know, at the touch of a button, you can see where someone is. You can share your location. You can access all these apps. It does make, there are communities where people feel more seen as long as you're surrounding yourself by the right people. You know, you might be able to reach out to people who and be vulnerable with that you wouldn't otherwise have come into contact with. There's so much good in the world from us being digitally connected, but we can't, it's not black and white, and we do have to be careful with it. And I do think we have to protect our young people. Personally, as a mum, I'm going to keep my kids away from smartphones as long as I possibly can, because it's sad to see. As a doctor, I mean, I can't tell you how many times when you call a young person into clinic, you walk down the corridor, you go into the waiting room, you call out a name. There's so much that you learn from how someone stands up and walks towards you. What's their body language doing? Have they got a hip problem? You know, you pick up a lot of things in their behavior, the way they move, small talk along the corridor. It just tells you so much. With young people, not always, but a lot of the time, they'll be on a phone when you shout them. They'll stand up and they'll look at you briefly. Okay, right, come on. They'll still be on the phone doing something as they're walking up the corridor. Sometimes even as they're sat in the chair, they'll finish what they're doing and then they'll put the phone down and then they'll say, okay, sorry. What? That's crazy. There's been a few times people have answered texts in the middle of a conversation. And it's one of those situations where you go and see your doctor, you think it's quite protected. It's quite serious, isn't it? You've got to be involved in that conversation. But those devices are still even leaking into those situations because they're just so compelling.
Yeah. And it's interesting that, because I think, you know, one of the things I know a lady who does some self-defense stuff, and she was just saying, you know, the trouble is, especially women are more at risk, but also you've got mobile phones that are distracting. So people are not aware of what's around them because they're so focused on the phone. Because, you know, sometimes you can walk away from something, but if you're on the phone and you can't see what's happening around you, you know, you've got no chance.
No, that's so true. And pickpockets must be having a great time recently because it would be quite easy. It'd probably be quite easy to take something from someone.
Well, they won't notice it, will they? It's just how it's going. So that's really, it's an interesting one, but quite a big one. I think.
It's hard. There's no easy solution to this. None. Yeah. And you know, you think you have to make the right decision that's right for you, but just be mindful of what that is doing to you, but also what that's potentially doing to your kids. And try and just get a bit of control over it.
And I think authenticity, isn't it? Like you mentioned earlier with the social post, because I think there was something recently to do with, is it the skinny jabs or something?
Yeah, probably. I mean, there's
there's
a lot
so
about that.
much.
Yeah.
I think it was, I saw it somewhere, and it's just, people get hooked onto all these things and just buy. I think it was a TikTok thing, and they're showing all these videos, and this is easy, this works like this, and they have all these skinny parties and all that. But what is going into your body? And it's where you were saying, where a lot of people will just jump on a trend. They don't understand the medical significance of anything. They don't understand what's going in their body. They don't even know the value of that stuff. All they have in their head is that it's going to make me look like that.
I know. I mean, that's an absolute minefield when it comes to kind of body dysmorphia and things, isn't it? And the trends thing, I think, is we cycle through trends a lot quicker now than we ever did. Back in the day, someone there'd be a particular toy and it would kind of linger for 6 to 12 months. But now trends are changing so rapidly that it must be really difficult for young people to keep up with them financially, never mind anything else. But yeah, when it comes to, the diet culture online is obviously pretty scary, and my concern with that is a lot of it is kind of wrapped up as wellness when it isn't. It's diet culture in disguise. And I'll tell you about a study that was done in the 90s, which we do use in our program actually to demonstrate to young people about the power of social comparison. So, it's normal to compare yourself to others. We all do it as a species. We always have. It's a survival thing. But humans weren't made to be able to compare themselves to so many people and to be able to cope with that. And what you're seeing online essentially is always a highlight reel. You're not seeing everyday stuff that comes from people's lives. Fiji didn't have television until 1995. And some researchers from Harvard University went to study women and girls in Fiji in 1995 to look at the rate of kind of dieting and eating disorders. And the rate of dieting and eating disorders in 95, just before the TV came in, was 0%. Culturally in Fiji at the time, it was really kind of celebrated to be bigger and be stronger. And then they went back just 3 years later in 1998, which is just such a short period of time. And they interviewed all the girls there, and they found that I think it was 11%. Again, please don't quote me, but it's roughly that. 11% of them had purged, as in been bulimic, to try and control their consumption at some point. And I can't remember the exact statistic, but again, it's around 60 or 70% of them had dieting or were dieting to try and control their weight. And that had started off as 0 because their culture, they were fine with that beforehand, before they were exposed to different body shapes. And, I'm all about everyone trying to better themselves, but not at a point where it becomes unhealthy, and you lose the ability to recognize what is unhealthy when you're being exposed to a lot of more extreme content. And that is my huge concern when it comes to social comparison and body dysmorphia. And young people in particular, teenagers' brains are wired to compare themselves more to other people and to worry about themselves more. So they're even more vulnerable to that type of content. I really don't like social media personally. I know it's not good for me. I set up my social media as part of setting up the business because I had to. That's where you have to be. And I put in my, just literally gender and age and my suggested for you page. It's fascinating. If you just try and set up a new social media account, right, pretend just make up a fakey person, put it on and see what happens. Almost most of the posts I were getting were sort of before and after bikini shots of people that had lost some weight for holiday or whatever it was. I thought that is basically what socially they think that I am going to want to see and engage with. And as a young person who's maybe a bit worried about something, who's might be vulnerable, it's really not going to help, is it?
No. I'm not very good on socials, to be honest, and it's I'm all right on LinkedIn, but I'm not good with the other ones and stuff. And like yourself, I didn't have any of it until my skincare business, because my dental one, I'm not on there for that, but it's definitely, yes, that's where it's going. But it's a lot harder, I think, when you're not used to it. Whereas with the youngsters, it's almost like they don't need a business to be on there. It's just like everybody's on there. And,
Yeah, Yeah, everybody's just on there. That's your life. You
Everybody's just,
document your life. Yeah.
Yes,
And
so
again,
good.
fine. And I'm sure there's some really positive things that come out of that for people. I mean, LinkedIn, yeah, I've met some amazing people on LinkedIn. Some of our experts we've managed to find on LinkedIn. And yeah, it's fantastic in that respect. But it still can suck you in. I've still been sucked in scrolling through things that I'm like, this is why I don't need to be reading this right now. And that's okay. It's just because there's so much content out there, and it's just, yeah, you have to be disciplined with yourself. We all have to be more disciplined with ourselves, which is tricky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we've unpacked so much. I think we
I know.
just need to, we just need to talk about all the different parts, but they're all really, really important. And, I just love the work that you're doing. So it'll be really interesting to see, where the business is going, but also be able to share more with the audience. So, where can they find you if they want to work with you, whether it's schools or individuals?
Yeah, so all through our main website would be the best place to start, which is peachwellnessacademy.com. They can sign up at the moment. You can sign up to a newsletter on there. You can reach out, or you can actually just, when we launch in a couple of weeks' time, you'll be able to just sign up for a free trial to see some of the material. And if you're an individual, a parent or a teen, you can sign up for the program itself. Schools equally the same. We have opened up all the social media channels that are relevant. So if you search for Peach Wellness Academy anywhere, X, TikTok, LinkedIn or Instagram, you'll be able to find us on there too, and reach out and hopefully follow our journey.
No, fantastic. No, that's amazing. And good luck with it all. I will certainly be following, and I've got youngsters as well, so we definitely have to check it out. But I will be sharing all your websites and your socials when the episode goes live. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been great to chat.